I want to be very clear. That first hour of this much anticipated testimony was the nail in the coffin to what is a complete bogus and sham impeachment inquiry.
Today, Hunter Biden testified in front of the House Oversight Committee as part of their impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. And as we know, for years now, they've accused the president of being involved in his son's foreign business dealings by allegedly selling his political influence for profit. Now, Republicans have, of course, repeatedly failed to provide a single shred of evidence, anything concrete of these allegations, and anything to show that Biden actually did engage in any wrongdoing. And look, I'm obviously receptive to any evidence. It's not like we don't criticize Biden on this show regularly, but again, they've failed to provide that evidence. Now, the transcript of Hunter's deposition hasn't been released yet. It's likely going to be released tomorrow, but a House Oversight Committee source said that it would be released quickly and that Biden's lawyers would have an opportunity to review it beforehand. And if you're wondering, okay, why are they announcing these like specific details about when the transcript is gonna be released? It's mostly because of the fight that Hunter Biden engaged in with the House Oversight Committee in regard to the deposition. Hunter Biden wanted to do a public deposition so Republicans couldn't selectively pull a few statements to make him look bad to the public. He wanted the public to see the entirety of his deposition, but apparently he eventually agreed to do a closed door deposition, and that's what occurred today. While we don't have the transcript, we do have Hunter Biden's fiery opening remarks. He told the committee the following: I am here today to provide the committees with the one uncontestable fact that should end the false premise of this inquiry. I did not involve my father in my business, not while I was a practicing lawyer, not in my investments or transactions, domestic or international, not as a board member, not as an artist, never. For more than a year, your committees have hunted me in your partisan political pursuit of my dad. You have trafficked in innuendo, distortion, and sensationalism, all the while ignoring the clear and convincing evidence staring you in the face. You do not have the evidence to support the baseless and MAGA-motivated conspiracies about my father because there isn't any. Now, House Democrats told reporters during a break in the testimony that Hunter Biden's answers to Republicans' questions further proved that there shouldn't be an impeachment inquiry into the president. Obviously, they have a bias, but the reason why I'm gonna take their word for it here is because, again, Republicans have failed to provide any evidence that Joe Biden engaged in any wrongdoing. Representative Eric Swalwell of California said that Democrats experienced secondhand embarrassment when the Republicans started asking personal details about Hunter Biden's divorce from his wife nearly a decade ago, saying they are so desperate to humiliate the president. But most Republicans are remaining pretty defiant, like Nancy Mace, who provided the following persuasive argument. Representative Nancy Mace told reporters that the testimony is BS and a lie and stupid. Further, she says, this is not about Hunter Biden's drug issues, which a lot of families deal with, and that's sad and terrible and tragic, and I empathize with their family on that. This is about pay to play. This is about corruption. This is about selling access to the president of the United States.
We might have millions of people watching this show, but you can be the difference maker because we just need 1% of our audience to be paid members, and then this show can be around forever. So you can make that difference. Click join now.
And honestly, I literally cannot think of anything more indicative of the American political system than pay to play. It is literally legalized and baked into our system. Now, of course, what they're accusing Joe Biden of would be illegal, but they again would have to provide evidence of it, and we have not seen a shred.
Yeah, she says it's about pay to play. She means it's about pay to play that we haven't established, that is not within the incredibly broad confines of what we allow in terms of pay to play. Because Nancy Mace And every other one of those has taken hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars from businessmen and lawyers and interest groups and the pharmaceutical industry and the energy. They have all done that. And that's just campaign money. I mean, it stands in for them having to actually raise money. So it's money at the end of the day. We act as if it's some special kind of money. It's just money. And then once they leave office, then they literally sell their influence. They become lobbyists purely because of who they still know in government. They're not experts on the material or anything. It is literally just influence peddling, but that's legal. They've set that up because that benefits them. It's not supposed to benefit Hunter Biden, but only because he's a Biden. Being a family member doesn't even matter. So many of them have family members that have positions on boards that they don't earn. And so much of this is just so fact-free, so ridiculous. They're trying to embarrass Hunter over his divorce. Look at the Trumps, man. How many embarrassing divorces do they have amongst them?
I mean, there's literally a sitting Republican member of Congress, Desjardins, who had an affair and then persuaded his mistress to have not one, but 2 abortions.
Is he a Biden though? He doesn't sound like a Biden, so I don't care and stop talking about it.
This is a conservative Republican.
Yeah. None of this has anything to do with the Bidens. Right. It's just about Trump. He's corrupt, he's broken the law, so I guess we have to pretend that there's something here for the next year?
We don't, because honestly, I'm shocked to say this, but there are conservatives in the press who say there's no evidence and they're not pretending like there is evidence. And that person is Steve Doocy. Let's watch.
Ainsley, there are many lawmakers who say they've seen 0 evidence of high crimes.
What we just said,
but to impeach somebody, you need direct evidence of misconduct by Joe Biden. Look, Hunter Biden, it sure looks like he traded on his name, and he's going to have plenty of time
with his
today.
dad. The role his dad has played is key.
We're going to have plenty of time, the Republicans are, to ask him a million questions. It will be interesting to hear what he has to say, but right now, according to Republicans, there's no.
What Republicans?
Some Republicans say they've got the goods on Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, but a number of Republicans who I've spoken to on Capitol Hill say there's no direct evidence of misconduct by the current president.
They're just so corrupt.
This is so unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my God. The entirety of our political system is corrupt. Again, it's baked into the system, but in regard to the alleged crimes that the Bidens committed, you gotta show us the evidence. And by the way, the lack of evidence was made even more clear in a pretty heated exchange between James Comer, who's the head of the House Oversight Committee, and a reporter after Hunter's testimony about a $200,000 loan repayment check he received from his brother in 2018 while he was a private citizen. Let's watch.
Does anyone in here question whether or not that was influence peddling? Does anyone question that?
I think there's a lot of questions about it, sir, because there was no evidence that Joe Biden did anything.
He got $200,000 from.
What did he do as a public official?
That Jim Biden said.
He wasn't vice president at the time.
You can defend Joe Biden all day long. You can defend Joe Biden. You can be on his legal defense team. Kevin Morris will probably pay your legal bills if you want.
You're not answering my question.
No, I am answering your question. You don't understand what we've said over and over and over. Joe Biden took $200,000.
Was he vice president at the time that $200,000 check was put through?
Did what?
He was a private citizen at the time that $200,000 check went through, was he not?
The $40,000.
The $200,000 check, which you've cited twice.
So it's okay.
Was he a public official at the time?
So do you have a problem that Joe Biden's lied about that? Do you have a problem that America?
I don't have any evidence that he's lied about it. I'm asking you, what specific action did he take as a public official, an elected public official, that led to those businesses benefit? If you have that evidence, sir, present it.
Calm down. It's okay. No, it's okay. All the angry liberals, what you're saying, they'll be fine. All right, listen.
It's convincing.
That was awesome. That was the most insane exchange. What was that? The $200,000, $100,000, $40,000. Calm down, calm down. You're the one who looks pretty panicky, Comer. You can't answer a single question. He's talking about a loan repayment check that Hunter Biden received from his brother as a private citizen in 2018.
Yeah, but I think that his brother only gave him that money because Hunter's a Biden. I think that's why. So it's still about the name.
Got him.
It's so stupid. Like, look, I don't know what the hell that was, and neither apparently does James Comer. He has no idea. But again, it doesn't matter. He does not need to come out looking good from an interaction like that, because that interaction will never be played on Fox News. No conservative will ever see it.
They will only be played on Fox News.
Was
if
it
I'm
really?
not mistaken.
Well, then that's not going to help him.
Fox News for that video.
Okay, well then that's not going to help him in the end. Thankfully, they have walls up against actually internalizing any of it. The issue is that he doesn't really have to make a case in the same way that when their informant was outed as like a tool of Russian propaganda. Has that really hurt the effort?
No,
like there were some people who hypothesized that it might. James Comer is still going out.
Well, not only that.
So what's the difference? Like,
the Republican voters who are absolutely convinced that Joe Biden engaged in wrongdoing and influence peddled to profit off of foreign business dealings, they were not at all persuaded after that FBI informant was indicted.
Yeah.
And after they found out that his claims were fed to him by the Russians and turned out to be completely and utterly false. But I want to go to one more video real quick, John, before you jump in, because since Comer's attempt to provide evidence has not gone so well, Comer did do his best to come up with excuses for why the investigation hasn't really been working out for them. So let's take a look at that, and I'm curious what you think about it.
As long as we keep getting you information in, we're going to continue to pursue. I'm ready to try to begin to close this investigation. This has been a very difficult investigation. This administration has been very obstructive. They haven't been cooperative. I feel like we're having to battle the Department of Justice and the FBI on a daily basis to get basic information. Many of our witnesses that we brought in would be what I would consider hostile witnesses. But at the end of the day, I think with every interview, we've learned new information. And the basis of what we've learned is that the Bidens didn't have a legitimate business. Their business was selling access to Joe Biden.
Hostile witnesses like Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's former business partner, who James Comer said was the smoking gun, and then didn't even show up to the questioning, the closed door questioning of Devin Archer, because he knew Devin Archer had nothing to say that would be incriminating for Joe Biden. Listen, I get that there are Republican voters who are hanging their hat on this investigation, and honestly, I feel kind of bad for them, because as I watch them and their hopeful faces, I think of myself during the Mueller investigation. And I at least had enough, like I was at least grounded in reality enough to accept that there was no evidence of Trump colluding with Russia to try to steal the election, okay? It's just the fact of the matter, okay? That's the reality of what the Mueller report was. But I don't know how MAGA voters are gonna handle the reality of this investigation, which is there's no there there. I know you really want it, but I think you'd be it would be better served if you just look forward to the absolute, in my opinion, bloodbath the Democrats are gonna experience in the general election with an incredibly vulnerable, weak candidate, Joe Biden. Like they should be celebrating right now. I mean, it looks really bad for Biden.
They're very angry. They watch a lot of Fox. It makes them mad. I will also say that Donald Trump, during the Mueller investigation, was not a hostile witness during his sit-down interviews with Mueller, because he never had one. During the entire thing over the course of multiple years after firing the head of the FBI, he never actually had to testify. But I digress. The thing about this that is perhaps most annoying, beyond the fact that they're only doing this as cover for Trump, that James Comer doesn't believe literally any of this, is as mad as they say they are about Joe Biden's corruption, they would be even madder if we were to ask them, so would you like to get money out of politics? Of course they don't. They don't at all. They're not interested in getting rid of any of the many forms of corruption that they benefit from on a daily basis. We can't even ban them from using the classified, like privileged information they get in hearings to immediately run out and buy stocks. We can't even, that's not campaign money, by the way. That goes in their bank account. We can't get them to even do that. There are conservatives out there who actually care about corruption, and unfortunately they vote for conservative politicians who benefit from it and want to do nothing to stop it. They pretend to care about it when it's Biden because that helps them in an election year. But nothing that Biden is done, or even that they're lying and saying that he did, but he hasn't, is something that they actually want to stop. They want to jump in that corruption the same. And the fact that he's getting the money because he's Joe Biden, Donald Trump had 4 diplomats staying in his hotels that didn't actually use the rooms. There's a million different ways that they funneled money to him, and not while he was a private citizen, while he was president. And now that he's a candidate again, they're funneling him money in 100 different ways.
I know, John, but Trump is their guy.
That's the frustration, yeah.
So anyway, remember, public resources are being utilized for this sham investigation. And it's a damn shame. And as these lawmakers are hyper-focused on politically motivated investigations, they're doing absolutely nothing for the American people. So in the end, the real losers of all of this are the American people.